What's up, electronic music producer? Vocals can make or break a track. If it doesn't sound right, your track's going to sound amateur right away. So let's jump into one of my tracks, and I'm going to show you exactly how to process and work with vocals to be able to get to a point where your tracks are sounding professional and the vocals stand tall in your mix. Let's jump into it. Here's a track that I've done trainings on before already. It's a vocal track where Brent's the singer. I'm part of HOKI and I'm the producer. He's the singer, and then this is his vocals in our track. This is a track that's not released, and it's one of my older tracks, and I feel like it'll be a good example for this training. So I'm just going to play it a bit so you hear the vocal section of the track.
Can you see me behind this face? Holding on, these lines carried away through these eyes. I see
Okay, so first things first, you see there's 4 layers for the main vocal. So I'm going to go through each one of them and talk to you a bit about what I did. There's nothing too complex here, but that's going to bring me to my second point. So let's jump into this first, and then we'll talk about the second point, which is actually very important as well. I'm just going to basically mute this and just hear the main vocal line by itself.
Can you see me behind this face?
And now this is the second layer. So I've pitched it up. Make sure when you're pitching up that you're in pro mode and you play a bit with the formant to get the right texture and the tone that you want to. This adds a bit of that high-end energy. You could have your vocalist do a falsetto, higher pitch type of singing to layer it as well. But in this case, we didn't have the falsetto recording, so I just kind of artificially erased a copy of the vocal 12 semitones to get the octave in. It doesn't sound perfect, but because it's lower in the mix, it fits in. Let's look at the third one. These 2 channels right here are the lower version of it. It's very low. Just kind of adds a bit of body to it. But honestly, like, as much as these layers are important, like, none of them are really necessary if the vocalist is good at executing. Now, there's a lot of like vocal trainings you're going to see online where there's like so many different layers of vocals, like 15 different layers of vocals. You can do that if you want to, where the singing, the timing needs to be aligned to add a lush filled up space. But for electronic dance music with proper effects, when we get a vocalist to sing properly, number one, we put proper effects on it. We tune first, then we put the effects on it. It's more than you need, because it's not an acoustic track, and it's not a track where it's vocal heavy usually. But even then, like, it's a philosophy here. Do you want that fully filled up pop feel where there's so many different layers, or you want a bit of that more intimate sounding vocals? I like fewer layers in vocals because it directly points to the fact that the singer knows how to sing really well and executes really well, which is really hard to find. And number 2, it just creates this intimate type of experience listening to a vocal that's only one channel. Now, people might disagree with me. I mean, I don't care. That's fine. We all have our ways of approaching things, but having done this for a very, very long time and having worked on hundreds of vocal tracks, I've realized like keeping vocals a bit more minimal sounding always ends up being better from my experience in my music that has been in the realm of like dance music. If if you don't have a vocalist that executes singing very well, that knows how to sing, not only knows how to hit notes, but there is emotion behind it, and that's captured in recording. Most of the work is that. From that point on, we tune, right? If we need to tune, if you're working with an amazing vocalist, you barely need to do any tuning. As a matter of fact, we released our third album. It's called None of Us Will Ever Be the Same. If you want to check it out, HOKI, None of Us Will Ever Be the Same. There's about 11 or 12 tracks, I forget, because we've done several albums. None of the vocals are tuned. And we did it on purpose just to show to, like, A, because we want to keep it very raw and vulnerable. And B, just to show that when you have good vocals, you don't really need tuning. There's moments where the vocals go slightly off, but it fits the vibe, the realness and the rawness of the energy. So keep that in mind. I know these days there's a lot of like AI tools that sync for you or XYZ. I just want to go back to the traditional sense of like getting a vocalist, putting them on the microphone, getting them to sing their heart out and keeping it genuine. So execution is super important. Second thing you want to look at is you want to make sure that you're not busying up the track too much with too many things going on when the vocalist is singing for attention purposes. Like here right now, we got the lead playing, that's slowly opening up. Vocal comes in here, and then the lead comes back in here. So there's an exchange happening. There's a conversation happening.
I fear that this comes in waves.
See again, the lead stops, vocal comes back in, and the vocal is going to sing in again, and the lead's going to come in.
That this comes in waves.
So this is just to say, like, storytelling wise, when you are actually putting in vocals in electronic music, let's stick to that for now, because this thought process is the same across pretty much all genres of music, but for electronic music, it's very specific in terms of the thinking and how we approach it. So there's a bit of an exchange here with the lead and the vocals. We don't want to have vocals sitting on the leads too much. You might have moments where that works, but overall you don't want to. So it creates a story, the conversation moves forward, and it makes sense. Now also, if we look at the frequency range that the vocal lives in this case, is a male vocalist.
That this comes in waves.
We're pretty much in this region right here, anywhere above like 200 hertz. The mid-range is very heavy. Vocals are usually found in that range, but based on the key of the track and the singing style of the vocalist and the gender of the vocalist, that's where we know where the frequency range falls in the spectrum. But keeping that in mind, we're going to have to ask ourselves, what's happening in that region and what's happening in the higher bit, because the tail of the vocals are ending up in the higher bit as well. So if we were, let's say, let's take parts where there's a lot being played, like for example here.
That this comes in waves.
So the high frequency, we're good in a sense of like the leads are not playing at the same time as the vocals. But when we look at the plucks, let's just solo the plucks and the vocals. Let's go in the master channel EQ. Let's play here.
That this comes in waves.
So the fact that there is contrast between the plucks rhythm, the plucks aesthetics, and the vocals. So the plucks are playing very rhythmic experience. The vocals are singing a few kind of ad-libby words in a very smooth way. That contrast naturally helps the human ear understand what's going on without too much chaos. If we had, let's say, the rhythm of the pluck play rhythmically very obvious, and then the vocalist does a rhythmic pattern on top of it, that might cause some confusion there. But because it's positioned in a way where they're contrasting each other's experience, the human brain can perceive both of them in the same range and still create an understandable environment. The lead doesn't get in the way. Now we got the pads. Let's solo the pads. And the reason why I'm telling you all this is because when the vocalist sings on a track in electronic music, like a lot of times, especially dance music, we might take parts of the vocals and push it back and forward. It doesn't necessarily going to be that the vocalist sang a certain way in the track and we're going to keep everything the same. But why do we move things around as producers? We move things around to tell a story. Vocals are an instrument, just like anything else, to tell the story of the full picture, the full track. We want to make sure that we move things around and we assess these types of thinking to make sure we position vocals properly for better story building. right? So it all ties into that. How your vocals are perceived are not only related to how the execution is, how the recording is, how the tuning and the processing is, but it's also where is it presented in the track and in the story. And that's what I'm talking about right now, which is the harder piece to solve. We look at the pads. The pads are in the same range as the vocals.
That this comes in waves.
So good thing is the vocals here are fully open, but the pads are still being filtered. You hear it, it's just kind of kept very warm. The mids and the high mids of the pads aren't fully open, so they don't interfere with the vocals too much, which is a great thing. So strategically speaking, like the pads are not interfering with the vocals. The plucks aren't because of the textural rhythmic difference, which creates contrast, and the lead is not in the way because they're not being played at the same time as the vocals. So the main three elements in the track are not competing with the vocals, and this makes for an experience that sounds more cleaner and more presentable, and we know what to listen to at any given point of the track. Now, something else that's also important, I have multiband compression here at the end. Now, this multiband compression isn't turned on. For example, let's go to the pads. And this, I don't want to make this less technical because this technicality isn't that important. I could create a training about multiband compression more in depth some other time. We did talk about the OTT in the other training, but overall, what a multiband compression does is it compresses a specific segment of the channel, the track. And in this case, it's sidechained, right? It's sidechained to right here to the vocals. Let's grab the vocal group. Where is it? Vocal group. I've decided this range as being the range where the vocals exist, and this is directly on the pads.
That this comes in waves.
So whenever the vocals come in, there's a bit of a compression, sidechain compression happening in this region in the pads. So while they do exist in the same region, and production-wise, macro sound design-wise, I explained why they're not really interfering, I'm still adding this as an extra layer to play just a bit more safe and open up some space for the vocals a bit more, so the vocals don't sound too loud or too quiet in some cases. And I'm sure you've been in situations where you feel like the vocals are too quiet, you raise the volume, now they sound too loud, and then you bring it back down, it sounds quiet again. With multiband compression, we can open up some space. So in this case, I've affected only the mids, but you could do the mids and the sides, it's fine. What's important here is I've selected external in a sidechain section, and I've selected the vocal group, meaning that the vocals are going to signal the compression to happen, and this is happening on the pads. And you could do this on different instrument groups as well. And the whole idea is when the vocal comes in, that's when the compression is activated in the region where the vocals exist. We don't want to compress other aspects of the pad in this case, because the vocals are not really found there too much.
That this comes in waves.
Doing this on different groups allows you to have your vocals tucked in a bit more in the mix, and it doesn't feel like it's drowning, or it doesn't feel like you need to push it too loud for it to then be too loud in the mix. So most importantly with the vocals, execution needs to be there, number one. Number two, we want to make sure that we could tune. We didn't talk about tuning in this training. There's a lot of tuning trainings online you can watch, but before we worry about tuning, let's make sure the execution is great. We're working with vocalists that know how to sing, that have confidence behind their performance, so the tuning that you do is very minimal. We could talk about processing in another training, but overall, how do we structure vocals into a track? And the thinking behind it is that we want to make sure that it's not interfering with the lead, and it's making space through multiband compression with the instruments that you're using. Guys, hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, comments, drop them below. Looking forward to helping you guys out. If you ever want to chat with us, see how we could help you in a more involved sense through our program, through another method, let us know. Book a call in the link below, and then let's chat. See ya.